All right, so get ready to bundle up because for this deep dive, we're going to a place that's, well, it's basically like icy wilderness, right? But also it's at the heart of some like really intense international stuff going on.
Yeah.
Greenland.
It is pretty wild how this, massive island, a place that's often like just this little white blob on maps,
Right.
is now like suddenly a big deal in global politics.
It's so true. You wouldn't think a place known for like glaciers and polar bears, would be making headlines. But our sources,
Right.
a whole bunch of recent news articles are all talking about President-elect Trump's renewed interest in, in acquiring Greenland.
Again. And it's not the first time this idea has come up. And the reactions from Greenland and Denmark, let's just say they're not exactly thrilled.
Yeah, I don't think like ridiculous and a joke are the kind of things you put in a tourism brochure.
Definitely not.
But that's what makes this whole deep dive so fascinating. We're going to unpack WHY. Greenland is suddenly like so strategically important, especially now.
Yeah.
And of course, we'll look at what a potential U.S. purchase would even look like, historically, and how everyone involved feels about it all.
Yeah, it's super important to understand everyone's motivations here, the potential benefits, and of course, the real challenges that would come with such a massive change.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it's not like buying a souvenir on vacation. So, first things first. Where does Greenland itself stand on all of this? Our sources highlight Greenland Premier Mute Ejid's stance.
Yeah.
And it seems like he's a man who knows what he wants.
Right.
He's open to, talking with President-elect Trump.
Sure.
But becoming part of the U.S.?
Yeah.
Not so much.
No. That's a really important thing to understand. Ejid is like laser focused on Greenland's autonomy. He doesn't want to just swap one ruling power for another.
Right.
It's all about Greenlandic independence for him.
Got it.
He wants Greenland to forge its own path.
And there's this quote from him that really struck me. He says, and I'm paraphrasing here, that he doesn't want Greenland to be like Danish or American.
Right.
He wants it to be simply Greenlandic.
Powerful statement.
Right. It speaks volumes about how strong their identity is.
Absolutely. This desire for self-determination adds like a whole other layer of complexity to this situation.
Okay, so we've got a leader who's more into collaboration than becoming, another star on the flag.
Right.
But that makes me wonder, why is Greenland even on the radar?
Yeah.
What makes it so strategically important in the first place?
Okay, so this is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
And it all boils down to like one major factor: climate change.
Okay.
The Arctic ice is melting and like really fast.
Yeah.
Which is a huge deal globally.
Right.
Think about it. New shipping routes are opening up.
Oh, wow.
Cutting travel time, potentially reshaping global trade.
Okay.
And under all that ice, a ton of natural resources.
Right.
Greenland sits right smack in the middle of all of this.
Wow.
Which makes it super attractive to, global powers, particularly the U.S. and Russia.
So it's not just about the land itself.
Yeah.
It's about what's becoming possible because of its location and what's underneath.
Exactly.
Because Greenland is suddenly holding like all the best cards in a high-stakes game.
Exactly. And before we go any further, I think it's important to like define what we mean by geopolitics, because that's how we're, looking at all of this.
Okay, yeah.
It's basically how geography, things like location and resources influence a country's power and its relationships with other countries.
I see.
And in Greenland's case, its geography is like becoming a major power play.
Wow. Okay, so Greenland's got resources, a prime location in a changing Arctic, and a leader who's, pushing for independence.
Right.
And into this mix steps President-elect Trump, who seems pretty keen on the idea of the U.S. having, like, a bigger footprint in all of this.
For sure.
And our sources point out that this isn't his first attempt.
No.
Back in 2019, his advisors were already looking into this, and then there was that whole thing where he canceled a trip to Denmark.
Oh, right. After that pushback from Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen, who, to put it nicely, made it clear that Greenland was not for sale.
Yeah, like super awkward. It's like that family dinner where someone tries to buy grandma's like antique china right in front of her.
Yeah, totally.
And now, just to add fuel to the fire, we have Donald Trump Jr. taking a trip to nuke Greenland. Meeting with people and even getting his dad on speakerphone during the visit.
It's like a reality show.
I know.
But what's interesting about that call is that President-elect Trump emphasized Greenland's security, not just for the island, but for the whole world. He's putting it in a global context.
It does make you wonder if he's trying to, like, build a case for some kind of U.S. involvement, maybe bypass Denmark and appeal directly to Greenland.
Right.
But as we've said, he's facing a lot of resistance from both Greenland and Denmark.
Exactly.
Which leads to a question that, while unlikely, is still pretty interesting.
Okay.
What if, hypothetically, Greenland was for sale?
What if?
How much would it cost?
Oh, that's a good question.
Right. So our sources suggest looking at the U.S. purchase of Alaska back in 1867 as like a comparison point.
Interesting. Alaska and Greenland do have some similarities.
Yeah.
You know, Arctic climate, small populations, strategic locations, and of course, resources.
Right. So if we adjust for inflation, considering Greenland is about 150% bigger than Alaska, we're looking at, drum roll please, roughly $230.25 million.
Okay, so that's a very, very rough estimate.
Yeah.
Based on a lot of, like, assumptions.
Of course.
The actual cost, if this were even possible, could be way higher or lower. Right.
It depends on so many things.
It's not just land.
No. We're talking people, resources, infrastructure, international agreements.
So many things. But it is a fun thought experiment.
It is.
Our sources point out that the U.S. offered $100 million in gold for Greenland back in 1946.
Wow.
Which would be over $1.6 billion today.
That's still less than Greenland's current GDP, which was over $3 billion in 2021.
So we're talking about a place with a growing economy, resources that everyone wants, a location that's becoming super important.
Yeah.
And a desire to, you know, control its own future.
It's a fascinating mix.
No wonder Greenland is getting so much attention these days.
To really understand Greenland's options, though, we need to, like, dig into how it governs itself right now.
Okay.
Because it's not as simple as you might think. A lot of people might be surprised to know that Greenland actually has, like, a good amount of self-governance already.
That's a good point. It's not, like, a total blank slate when it comes to their political structure, so what's it look like? Well, right now, Greenland is part of what's called the Kingdom of Denmark.
Okay.
But back in 2009, they got the right to self-determination, formed their own government.
Okay.
They handle a lot of their internal stuff, like healthcare, education.
Right.
They even have their own police and courts.
So they're not just taking orders from, like, Copenhagen.
No.
They've got a say in things.
Exactly. And they've been getting more autonomous, taking control of more and more areas.
And one of the key things they're focusing on, I imagine, is resource management.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
Especially with, you know, the Arctic ice melting and all those resources becoming more accessible.
Right. Greenland wants to be in charge.
Makes sense.
Making the decisions about, you know, how those resources are developed and who benefits.
Which makes sense, you know, with their push for independence.
Yeah.
But wouldn't that make a U.S. purchase even more, like, improbable?
You're right. It would be like trying to, I don't know, rewind a movie that's halfway over.
Yeah.
Greenland's self-rule adds a whole new level of complexity. It's not just about land or money anymore.
Yep.
It's about the aspirations of a people,
right,
you know, who are determined to, like, choose their own path.
It really seems like a U.S. purchase is about as likely as, like, finding a palm tree in the Arctic.
Yeah, pretty much. But that doesn't mean the U.S. isn't interested strategically in the region.
Oh, right.
Our sources emphasize how important the Arctic is becoming, and the U.S. is, you know, paying attention.
They're watching. Remember those new shipping routes opening up?
Yeah.
Because of the melting ice?
Right.
That could totally change global trade, transportation.
And if you add in the fact that the Arctic's got, like, oil, natural gas, all those minerals.
It's a treasure trove.
Right. It's easy to see why everyone's interested.
It's like a giant Monopoly game, right?
Yeah.
The Arctic is the new boardwalk.
And the U.S. and Russia, they're trying to buy up all the property.
Interesting.
They both see the strategic value. They're both jockeying for position.
I see.
Trying to secure their interests.
So in that context, Greenland, with its location,
would
look pretty attractive to U.S. policymakers.
It's the best real estate.
Yeah.
A bigger U.S. presence in Greenland could give them a big advantage,
Right.
militarily and economically.
Okay.
Boost their military presence in the region, better access to resources,
Right.
maybe even help them counter Russia.
But wouldn't a move like that also, raise tensions with Russia?
Oh, for sure.
The Arctic is already, a geopolitical hotspot. It seems like adding more players could make things even more volatile.
It's a real concern. And any attempt by the U.S. to have more control over Greenland,
Right.
even through cooperation, would probably be met with resistance from Russia. We could see more military buildup, maybe even a higher risk of conflict.
It's a delicate balance.
It is.
Any move the U.S. makes will have ripple effects.
Absolutely, throughout the whole region and beyond.
So we're talking about a lot of competing interests here.
Yeah.
Greenland's desire for independence,
Right.
the U.S.'s strategic goals, Russia's counter moves, the economic potential of the Arctic,
Right.
and, of course, the environmental concerns that come with all of this.
Wow. It's a lot to consider.
It's like a game of chess where each move can change everything.
Exactly. And to really get what's at stake here, we need to, zoom out a bit.
Okay.
Connect this to the listener's own life.
That's a good point. It's easy to feel like these things are happening somewhere else.
Yeah.
And have nothing to do with us.
Right.
But that's not true at all.
No, not at all. What happens in the Arctic will affect everyone. Think about it. Competition for resources could affect prices for everything.
Oh.
Energy, consumer goods,
Right.
new shipping routes could change supply chains, affecting what we can buy, how much it costs.
And, of course, there's climate change, which is driving all these changes in the Arctic.
Exactly. The Arctic is warming twice as fast as the rest of the planet.
Yeah.
The effects of climate change are going to be felt there first and most intensely, but eventually everyone will feel them.
Right.
Rising sea levels, extreme weather, disrupted ecosystems.
So even if we never actually go to Greenland, what happens there matters to us.
Absolutely. Understanding how these forces are shaping the Arctic is key to understanding the challenges we all face in the 21st century.
Okay, so with that in mind, let's bring the focus back to Greenland.
Back to Greenland. Let's think about those big questions again.
Okay.
Will Greenland become totally independent from Denmark? How will they deal with all these powerful countries wanting influence in the Arctic? Can they use their resources to build a good future for their people?
Big questions.
We can't answer them for sure, but exploring them helps us see how complex this is.
It does.
And here's where it gets interesting for our listener.
Okay.
This isn't just about watching from a distance.
Yeah.
This is about recognizing that we're all connected. What happens in Greenland, in the Arctic, will affect us all.
It's pretty amazing to think about how a place that we mostly think of as, ice and snow is actually at the forefront of all this global change.
Right.
But as we've been talking about, Greenland's future is far from frozen in place.
It's definitely dynamic, complex, and it could impact all of us.
You're totally right.
Yeah.
What makes this so interesting is that Greenland's story, it's still being written.
Exactly.
We've looked at the idea of a U.S. purchase, which seems, pretty unlikely.
Yeah.
We talked about all those strategic interests that are making Greenland, a big deal.
A focal point.
Yeah. But the real heart of this story is the people of Greenland.
Yeah.
And their aspirations for self-determination.
Absolutely.
It reminds us that while, maps show borders and land, the real story is about the people who live there, their hopes, their dreams, their struggle.
Their lives.
Exactly. So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, let's think about the bigger picture.
Okay.
What can we learn from all of this? And how does it apply to, our own lives?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah. For me, I think about how important it is to understand, interconnectedness.
Oh, for sure.
The Arctic might seem far away, but what happens there, it has ripple effects everywhere.
It really does. Whether it's climate change or competition for resources or political alliances shifting, we're all connected, even if we don't always see it.
Greenland's story is a powerful reminder that we can't ignore what's happening, in other parts of the world.
Right, even if it seems far away or it doesn't affect us.
And it makes me think about how important it is to, stay informed
Yes.
and engage with, these complex issues.
Right.
We can't just sit back and watch.
No.
We need to understand what's going on and think about how our own actions can be part of the solution.
That's a great point. And I think Greenland also shows us how important it is to respect different viewpoints, to try to find solutions that work for everyone involved. It's not about one country or one group calling all the shots.
Right.
It's about working together, to create a future that works for everyone.
So to our listener, as we finish up this deep dive, we want to leave you with a challenge. Stay curious.
Yes.
Keep learning about the world around you, even the parts that seem far away or strange.
Right.
Think about how everything's connected, and don't be afraid to, get involved in these big conversations.
Because in the end, Greenland's story, it's a reflection of our own.
It is.
It's about how we deal with change, how we find balance, and how we create a future we can be proud of.
Well said. And on that note, we'll wrap things up.
Okay.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning,
yes,
and keep diving deep.